How many apps do you have on your phone right now that do things humans used to do in their heads? One to remember phone numbers, one to tell you where to drive, one to add up a bill, one to tell you when to sleep, one to tell you how many steps you've taken. Sometimes I sit and watch people for a moment, just quietly noticing things. You see it in small places, in supermarkets, on buses, even walking through a city center. There's this subtle pattern that seems to be everywhere now. People moving quickly, but also somehow carefully, choosing the option that asks the least of them, the route that feels smoother, the one that doesn't create friction. And the strange part is, most of us don't even notice it happening. Little decisions throughout the day, tiny choices that all lean in the same direction. We press the shortcut instead of learning the process. We follow the route that's already mapped out. We choose the answer that's already been provided. Life has become incredibly efficient, and in many ways that's a remarkable thing. But every now and then, a quiet question drifts through my mind when I notice these patterns. When did ease become the main direction we started walking in? Not comfort in the sense of warmth or rest. Those things have always mattered. I mean something slightly different. The quiet habit of choosing the path that asks the least courage. The one that blends in. The one that doesn't stand out too much. You can feel it sometimes in conversations. Someone has a thought and then hesitates. Someone notices something unusual and lets it pass. Almost like there's an invisible current guiding everyone back toward the same familiar lane. And I find myself wondering about that. Because when you look at the long arc of human history, the thing that stands out most isn't comfort. It's curiosity. It's the strange human instinct to step into places that are uncertain, just to see what's there. And somewhere along the way, something subtle seems to have shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Almost like the center of gravity moved a few degrees. And now, without really noticing it, many of us lean toward the safer option by default. The smoother path, the one that doesn't disturb the surface of things. And sometimes I wonder what that slowly does to the deeper parts of being human. And the more I notice that pattern, the more I realize something else is probably sitting underneath it. Because when you step back for a moment and look at the pace of the world now, it's a lot. Information everywhere, noise everywhere, things moving constantly. A human mind used to wake up, see the same few streets, the same few people, the same rhythms of the day. Now, before breakfast, you might have already seen news from 5 different countries, messages from 3 different apps, and 100 opinions about things you never even thought about yesterday. That's a strange environment for a nervous system to sit inside. So it makes sense that somewhere along the line, we started leaning toward things that feel easier. Anything that removes a bit of effort. Anything that smooths the edges of the day. And you can see why that would happen. When the outside world speeds up, something inside us quietly looks for steady ground. A familiar routine. A simple answer. A path that feels predictable. You can feel it in little moments. Someone looking up a quick answer, instead of sitting with a question for a while. Or letting a map guide every turn, instead of wandering a little and figuring things out. None of these things feel dramatic while they're happening. They're just small conveniences scattered throughout the day. But when you step back and look at them together, they begin to form a pattern. The world offers us more and more ways to remove friction from life, and naturally, we accept them. Because friction can feel uncomfortable. It asks for attention, it asks for patience, sometimes it asks for courage. So of course the smoother path starts to feel appealing. And again, I'm not saying that's a problem in itself. Life has always been about finding better tools and easier ways to do things. Humans have been doing that for thousands of years. But there's a quiet question that starts to appear when you think about it long enough. What happens when the smooth path becomes the default direction? Not something we choose occasionally. Something we follow automatically. And that's where the thought begins to drift somewhere deeper. Because if you look at the moments in history where humans did something extraordinary, the thing they all seem to share is a willingness to step into a little friction, a little uncertainty, a moment where the easier option wasn't the one they took. And that makes me wonder about something, not about technology, not about progress, but about the quiet balance inside human life. How much comfort keeps us steady, and how much comfort slowly begins to soften the edges of curiosity? Because curiosity has always been a slightly restless thing. It doesn't always choose the smooth path. Sometimes it wanders somewhere unexpected just to see what might be there. And that's the part that keeps circling in my mind sometimes. Because comfort itself isn't a strange thing. Humans have always looked for warmth, shelter, stability. That instinct is ancient. A warm fire after a long day, a safe place to sleep, food waiting on the table. Those things have always been part of the human story. But somewhere along the way, comfort started appearing in places it never used to sit before. Not just in rest, but in thinking. Not just in safety, but in curiosity. It shows up in the quietest ways. Someone has an idea, but they keep it to themselves. Because the room feels settled already. A person notices something unusual, but the moment passes. Bringing it up might feel awkward. Even asking a question can sometimes feel like stepping slightly outside the line. Everyone else is standing in, and most of the time nobody even notices these moments happening. They're small, they pass quickly, but if you add enough of them together, something subtle begins to form. A habit of staying inside the smoother path, the familiar one, the one where everything stays comfortable and predictable. And again, it doesn't feel dramatic while it's happening. It just feels easy. But the strange thing about ease is that it can quietly change the way we move through the world. Because the parts of being human that have always pushed things forward were rarely built on ease. Curiosity has a slightly restless energy. It asks questions that don't always have quick answers. It pulls people toward things that are uncertain. And courage is an even stranger force. It often shows up in moments where someone decides to step just slightly outside the comfortable circle. Not to prove anything, just because something inside them wants to see what happens if they do. And when you look across history, you start to notice that many of the moments that changed the direction of things came from people who followed that quiet pull. A scientist asking a question that didn't fit the accepted explanation. An explorer stepping beyond the map that already existed. An artist creating something that felt different from what everyone expected. Those moments didn't come from perfect comfort. They came from curiosity stretching a little further than the safe path allowed. And that's why I sometimes find myself wondering about the balance we're living inside now. Because modern life has become incredibly good at smoothing every surface. Answers appear instantly. Routes are mapped perfectly. Decisions can be guided before we've even finished thinking about them. And again, there's something remarkable about that. But it does create a quiet question. When life becomes very smooth, what happens to the parts of us that once grew through a little friction? Because friction isn't always an enemy. Sometimes it's the moment where something inside us wakes up. The moment where curiosity starts moving again. And the strange thing is, that spark never really disappears. You can see it in people all the time if you watch closely. Someone learning a new skill later in life just because something about it caught their attention. A person deciding to walk a different route home one day simply to see what's there. Someone asking a question in a room where nobody else thought to ask it. Those moments might look small from the outside, but they carry a very particular energy. It's the energy that has always moved humans forward. Curiosity doesn't make a lot of noise when it arrives. It just nudges someone slightly sideways from the path everyone else is walking. And the funny thing about curiosity is that it rarely arrives fully formed. Most of the time it starts as a quiet thought that almost slips past unnoticed. A little what if? What if there's another way to do this? What if the answer isn't quite what we assumed it was? What if I tried something slightly different? And when someone follows that thought, even just a little, something interesting happens. The world becomes wider again. Not because the world itself changed, but because the person interacting with it did. You can almost feel the shift when someone leans into that energy. They start noticing things they didn't notice before. They start seeing possibilities where previously there were only routines. And suddenly life has texture again. Edges, depth, moments that feel surprising instead of predictable. That's something humans have always been remarkably good at. Not just surviving, exploring, building, wondering, sometimes getting things wrong and learning from that too. There's a kind of quiet bravery in that process. Not the dramatic kind that shows up in films or stories. Just the everyday version, trying something unfamiliar, saying a thought out loud, standing slightly outside the pattern everyone else is following. And the interesting part is that this quality seems to exist in almost everyone. You see it in children constantly. They experiment with everything. They ask endless questions. They pick things up, take them apart, look at them from strange angles. Somewhere along the way, many people slowly move away from that energy. Life becomes more structured, more predictable. And sometimes the little voice of curiosity gets quieter. But it never completely disappears. It waits, usually just beneath the surface. And every now and then it rises again in a moment where someone pauses and thinks, maybe I'll try something different today, not for a grand reason, just to see what happens. And those tiny moments, the ones where someone steps slightly outside the familiar path, those are often where life starts feeling interesting again. Perhaps the real thought is not that comfort exists, but how we embrace it. Comfort has always had its place. A warm room, a quiet evening, a moment where everything feels steady. These are part of being human too. But I wonder if we've started organizing too much of life around one idea: smooth, predictable, contained. When everything becomes very smooth, something subtle can begin to fade from the edges of experience. The little surprises that appear when you try something unfamiliar, the strange excitement of not quite knowing, the moment where curiosity pulls you somewhere slightly outside the map you were following yesterday. Those things add texture to being alive. They create the stories people carry with them. They're the moments someone remembers years later and smiles at, even if they were a little uncomfortable. Because being human has never really been a perfectly comfortable experience. It's been curious, messy sometimes, full of questions, full of unexpected discoveries. That quality still lives quietly inside people. You see it whenever someone decides to learn something new just because it interests them, or when someone looks at the world in a slightly different way and follows that thought wherever it leads. Those small moments of curiosity have always been where the human story continues unfolding, not in perfect comfort, but in the gentle movement between the familiar and the unknown. So the real question isn't whether comfort exists. It's this: do we still leave space for curiosity? Just occasionally, enough to remind ourselves what it feels like to step outside the familiar lane. Because sometimes the most interesting parts of life begin with something very small. A quiet thought, a question, or a moment where someone simply decides to explore a little further. As always, this has been Valkyrie. Thanks for stopping by. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others. Lanterns up, people.